we? CCLA difference what? Difference makers, greatness clap. Hey, greatness clap. You're the difference makers and it don't stop.
All right, we are going to go ahead and get started. I know on the schedule it says that there will be two of us, but you just get me today. So my name is Karen Eaton. I work at the Contra Costa County Office of Education, and hopefully you're here to talk about engagement. I'd like to welcome all of you in. Welcome to our virtual participants that are joining us from all over today as well. Once again, in case you just joined us, the links are, there's short links on the screen for you, as well as a QR code that will take you to our Google folder. If you are a virtual participant, you are going to want to locate the VP slides, which is linked on the digital planner, which our fantastic room monitor Beatrice will drop in the chat for you. Hopefully you're here to get engaged today and talk about student engagement. If at any point you have questions, please let me know. Everybody should have a folder. If you need one, let me know. There were some at the tables, but not at every table. So just let me know. Inside is a note catcher and some other materials that we'll be talking about today. All right, let's make sure that we are moving forward. There we go. All right. So our first activity that we're going to do, you should have Post-its in the middle of your table. You're going to need 4 of those Post-its if you're here. If you are a virtual participant, you are going to open your VP slides and you are going to be working in slides 3 through 6 right now. So, but you're going to follow the same thing that our in-person people are going to be doing. There are 4 questions on the screen. What does the student engagement mean to you? What engages you as a learner? When do you find it difficult to stay engaged or to engage? And then what do you think is the most challenging thing about student engagement? I'm going to give you about 4 minutes if we need it. The people in the room, you're going to be putting each answer on a separate Post-it. And just think about for a minute what those questions bring up for you. Each answer goes on a separate Post-it. Our virtual participants, you have a slide deck, and on your slide, each question is on a different slide. You're going to grab a Post-it from the corner, write it in there, and then you'll be able to see what your other colleagues are writing as well. And so you can just drag off the top and type into your virtual Post-it as well. So I'm going to give you about 4 minutes to do that. If you are in person and you start to finish up your Post-its, you'll find posters up here in the corner that you can put your Post-its on. And again, virtual participants, you're just going to drag and drop yours on the slides. Virtual participants, I am loving all of those post-its I'm seeing on those slides. Thank you for sharing. I know I got you thinking very difficultly at the beginning, very beginning. Okay, you have about 30 seconds to finish up. If you didn't get to all 4 post-its, that's okay. My not so subtle timer. There you go. Fantastic. Thanks for putting all of those post-its up. That is fantastic. All right. This activity is called Chalkboard Splash. You have already put your post-its on the appropriate poster. If you are in person, you will notice today on our slides that you have an IP next to your directions. If you're virtual, you have a V next to what you're going to be doing. In person, you're going to partner up. If we have an odd number, you can triad up. And what I want you to do is just walk around to each of the posters, spend just a minute reading a couple of what your colleagues have written down. And just to front load you, you're looking for any similarities, trends, any differences, or if there's anything that surprised you. Sure, that sounds great. If you are a virtual participant, I would like you to scroll through slides 3 through 6, and you're going to be checking out what your colleagues wrote, looking for the same things, any similarities, any differences, or anything that might surprise you. For virtual participants, because you might not be able to see it, just so that you know, we have these 4 posters up and everybody put their post-its on it. That's what they're going to be walking around the room to read. This one, we're going to have a little less time. You're going to have about 3 minutes to do that. We've kind of spread out the posters a little bit. I think we might spread this one out and we'll move it maybe to the other side. That way, you got it? All right, thanks. Okay, so 3 minutes to do that. Partner up. Introduce yourself if you don't know who your partner is. And you're going to kind of walk around, talk about what you see that's the same, different, or surprising. To my virtual participants, feel free to drop your noticings in the chat, or you can drop a comment on the slide as well. a little less than a minute. I know, I know. Yeah, I know. Look, I didn't even have to say anything, and you are also conditioned that you went right back to your seats. It's right. Yes, you guys are great. Fantastic. All right. So embedded in today's slide deck, you'll see these blue slides. And everywhere that you see a blue slide, this is not necessarily part of the presentation, but this is sort of a facilitation move debrief, which means that we just had an activity that I wanted to share with you that you could use for engagement purposes. And it gives sort of a how it works and the steps to do this activity, so that when you leave here and you think, now, Karen had us do something, I can't remember what it was, you can go back to these blue slides and look at the different engagement activities that we experienced today. So you'll see those in there as well. So we are a proud partner of the CCLA grant and have had the opportunity to work with some great educators through this grant. And we are so happy to be here today. And what I wanted to do is tell you, before I go into our activities that we're going to do today, I wanted to just talk to you about this chalkboard splash. So this activity we did on Post-its and posters. You could also, if you're in a classroom, you could write a question about your content on the board. If it's if you're studying, the Revolutionary War, you could talk about that. When students finish, they could add their thoughts to a Post-it, or they can just go up, grab a pen, write directly on the whiteboard. It's a great way to get all students to have their voice. Sometimes you have students that don't want to speak up in front of everybody, but they get the opportunity to share their thinking. It's also great formative assessment. So I just learned in a few minutes that I need to make sure that you all are not tired and hungry. I need to make sure that I am enthusiastic, because I was able to see what disengages you as learners as well. And so it's a great way to kind of see quickly what's happening. I also saw on our virtual board that they do not want to have a presentation that is auditory only. They want hands-on activities. So that gives me a chance to kind of see what's happening. So you could use this in a classroom setting. You can also, if you're an administrator, you can use it with professional learnings that you're doing with your staff, or if you're at another COE, same idea. All right. So our activities that we're going to be doing today is I'm going to be introducing you or reintroducing you, if you've already heard about it, to a continuum of engagement that represents how teachers think about engagement. We're going to be exploring 5 aspects of engagement that I'm going to invite you to reimagine engagement from what you might have previously thought it to be more of a partnership. And then my goal is that you experience some engagement strategies that you can take back to your context, whatever that may be, and use them to support student engagement, to support teacher engagement, to support other educator engagement as well. I'm just curious, of those 3 things, which one is most interesting to you, or the one that you hope we get to the most? It's introducing the continuum engagement. You're going to hold up one finger, choose your finger wisely. If virtual participants, you are going to be dropping that number in the chat. If you're interested in exploring the aspects of reimagining engagement as a partnership, you're going to be showing me a number 2. And if you're interested in experiencing the engagement strategies and getting those tips and tricks, you're going to be holding up a number 3 or dropping it in the chat. So which one is most interesting to you? Go ahead and hold them up. All right. Oh, kind of all over the board. I love it. Okay, lots of threes. I'm seeing some ones, a few twos. How about in the chat? All right, excellent. In the chat, all threes as well. Okay, so here we go. One of the things, even before learning acceleration came around, Susie Pepper Rollins wrote a book called Learning in the Fast Lane. It was about 2014. And what she talked about was this quote said, "To reach their potential, struggling students need the most powerful, effective instructional practices that research and practice have to offer. Accelerating students as a method of boosting academic achievement is as much a shift in mindset as it is in instruction." And so while I am 100% positive that all of you are already doing amazing things to engage students and staff members, today what I'm hoping to do is give you another way to think about engagement that could enhance and accelerate student learning as well. So just out of curiosity, the work that we're going to be doing today is around this continuum of engagement, and it comes from Amy Berry's book, Reimagining Student Engagement. With a fist of five, five being I use this and I can tell you all about it, and a zero being I've never heard of this and I'm so excited to learn about it. Where are you? Have you heard of a continuum of student engagement? So give me 0 to 5. Drop it in the chat if you are a virtual participant. 0 to 5. Oh, I am seeing some ones. I'm seeing 3. I'm seeing a zeros. All right. How about in the chat, Beatrice? A 0. Fantastic. Okay, 2 3s and a couple of 5s. I know there are some friends from my COE, and I'm sure that they have heard me talk about the continuum of engagement before. Well, fantastic. For those of you that this might be review for, I hope you look at it as the opportunity to share what you know. Feel free to jump in. For those of you that have never seen it, I hope that you get a new tool to use today. All right, often we think about students as either being engaged or not engaged, sort of a binary situation happening. But really, there's a lot more happening underneath the surface. Under disengagement, it could be students might be disrupting other students from working. Students could be actively avoiding work, or students could just be passively withdrawing themselves from the group but still not engaging. On the engagement side, there's students that they're doing the work. They're doing exactly what they're being told to do. That's typically, I would call that compliance. There's students that might be investing in their work. That means they're seeing the value in what's happening, and they're starting to sort of propel themselves forward. And then the last one is students are driving their learning. And those are really about students that are taking an active role in engaging and moving their learning forward. So if you think about all of these things that are happening, and engagement is something that is so hard sometimes to detect. So hopefully I'm going to be introducing a tool to you that can help support that. In 2020, Amy Berry did some research around how teachers thought about student engagement based on their experiences in the classroom. And she created this model of a continuum of student engagement. You have a paper copy in your folder as well, or a digital copy for our virtual participants. And what she did was she took those different states of engagement, put them in columns along this continuum. You'll notice that on the outside, either side, those are more active forms of either engagement or disengagement. And then in the center, we have our passive forms of engagement and disengagement. And then you'll see here it's divided into 2 sections. On top, you'll see engaging with the activity. So that's the task that students are being asked to do, or the activity that they're being asked to do. And then on the bottom, it's engaging with peers. And you'll see some descriptors. And what I'm going to ask you to do, I'm going to give you about 3 minutes to kind of read this over. You're going to have about the first minute just to kind of look over it, read all of the descriptors for yourself. And then I'm going to ask you, what do you notice? What do you wonder about this continuum? If you're not as familiar with it, what kinds of things are coming up? Virtual participants, I'm going to invite you to drop some noticing and some wonderings in the chat as well. And then we'll hear some ideas after that. So you're going to have about 3 minutes to do that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pull you back together. All right. Is anyone willing to share either a noticing or wondering that they had or that they heard? I know, I'm sorry. I know.
It just dawned on me in evaluating my own engagement here and both with the keynote, how quickly I ping pong back and forth. 1 minute totally engaged, the next over doodling and not paying attention. And I'd never thought about that in relation to my students. I may catch them and look at them in that one moment they're over here when the rest of the time they've been in another place.
I love it. The continuum is not just for students. It is definitely, I love that you can see yourself in it and what your engagement was as well. Beatrice, do we have any noticings or wonderings in the chat?
All right, the first one, I noticed a much more nuanced way of thinking about levels of engagement of students and participants. Wondering is, how do we move students from one level to the next? I wonder if helping students, participants to be enlightened and guide toward self-awareness for active self-monitoring of engagement levels. The passive part reminds me of, quote, passenger mode from the Disengaged Teen book. I noticed goals in the driving level as an individual and as group. Another wondering, how might middle schoolers respond to seeing and placing themselves on this continuum? The chat is active. I'm sorry, guys. I also think that many of us bounce through different levels of engagement at different times, and that is also valuable information for the participant, student, and for the presenter. Last one is the engagement continuum is fluid.
Fluid, yes, agreed that it's not. It is moving from one moment to the next. Fantastic. Thank you, virtual participants. And if you're in the room, there were a couple things that I heard. I heard a lot of that a lot of students are kind of in that participating form of engagement, label of engagement. And again, we would call that compliance. And a lot of times, I was in the classroom for about 21 years, and I will tell you there are days participating was like my dream. If everybody just participated and was in compliance, that would be fantastic. And the studies show that in order for students to have their learning accelerated, they have to get into that investing and driving. They can't just remain in the passive form of engagement, which is participating. And so, so you'll see we did some work with some middle schools, and the kids that did kind of embrace this. The other thing that I want to share is that in a little bit later, you'll hear about a school that we worked on with this topic. And what this continuum did is it gave everybody common language to talk about engagement. And everybody was sharing the same ideas. They were using the same descriptors to think about engagement. And it didn't vary from classroom to classroom, which really supported student learning. So we are going to look at a video just so that you know the video that I'm going to share is a group of 4th and 5th grade students talking about engagement. And this brings up the idea of having the language to speak about what engagement means. I'm showing you just a little snippet of the video. You have access to the whole thing. There's also a hidden slide after this that has a high school example, if that's your setting and you want to check out what it looks like to introduce the continuum in high school. We have a video from Doug Fisher and Nancy Fry's school that they work at where they're introducing the continuum of engagement as well. So I just want to let you know that. All right. So they have the students describing each level of engagement, and I encourage you to watch the avoiding and the withdrawing because it's really interesting. And I think it's great that it's giving kids language for when they ask to go to the bathroom 100 times during an assignment, that what they're doing is they're trying to avoid working, and it starts to make them a little bit more aware of what's happening. So again, that language of having it is so important. So I encourage you to check that out. All right, we are going to do another activity. It is called IQ cards. If you are in person, I'm going to ask you to grab an index card off your table. If you are virtual participants, you are going to be starting on, it might be slide 7 now or 8. And you are going to, on one side of the card or the slide, you're going to write an insight that you had or heard about the continuum. What's something that just stuck out in your mind? And then you're going to either flip your card over or you're going to go to the other side of your slide and you're going to write one question that you have about the continuum. And I'm going to give you probably not all 3 minutes, but you'll get close to that, maybe 2.5 minutes to do that. So one insight that you either heard or had, one question that you have about this continuum. And other people will be reading your card, so if you could use your best handwriting, that would be fantastic. Great, just about 30 seconds. And again, if you don't get all the way through both an insight and a question, that is okay. Virtual participants, I forgot to tell you if you needed to add slides because there might be more of you than there are slides, please, hopefully you did that. I apologize, I forgot to mention that. I thought that one was a little more cheery than like the clicking down. So we'll go with that. All right. So here is what we are going to do with this activity. We are going to get into a circle. I know you're going to love this. You're going to bring your card with you. And since the camera is up here, I'm going to invite you to make a circle around these two front tables facing each other. Sound good? Okay, bring your card with you. We'll see if we can fit around these two tables. Don't be shy, come on up. Okay. All right. Well, we have to be able to close the circle. So you have to stand close to people. I am not in the circle, so you have to go in front of me. Great job. All right. Okay. Just make sure you can reach the person next to you. All right. So our virtual participants, you are going to be in the slide deck and you are going to be scrolling to slides that are different than yours. In person, we are going to be passing the cards to the left 3 times. Are you ready? Okay, go ahead. 1. Okay, you should have a new card. Virtual participants, you're just going to scroll through 3 slides. And if you get to the bottom, just go back up to the top. And what I'd like you to do is read your card on both sides. Now, you are all adults, so there's a high likelihood that your question had a question mark at the end, and your insight had some sort of period or exclamation point. If you have students that maybe have a little more trouble with punctuation, you could have them put a Q and an I on either side to help with that. All right, we are going to pass the card 2 times to the left again. Virtual participants, you are going to be scrolling to 2 slides from where you are. All right, and one more time, 3 passes to the left. Same thing, go ahead and read both sides of the card or both sides of the slides for our virtual participants. All right, I'm going to invite someone to either share an insight that kind of spoke to them and something new that they hadn't thought of, or a question that maybe they saw a couple times when they read a few of the cards. Can I get anybody to volunteer?
Yeah, I like this thought. It said much of old school teacher education, classroom management focused on more passive compliance behaviors.
Thank you for sharing. Anybody else? One more.
This person said, as inside, as young as elementary school students can learn the language of the continuum.
Spoiler alert, during the Ignites today, you'll see a TK classroom that has the engagement continuum in their classroom. So exciting. Yes, any age. Okay, I'm going to invite you to put your cards right here on this table and then head back to your seats. Virtual participants, hopefully you found maybe some similarities. Perhaps you saw some insights. We just did 2 different activities with this continuum. The first one was Notice and Wonder, which I love it because you can use it for everything. And then the second was the IQ cards. This is great. It could be a little bit challenging if you have students that maybe have a little more trouble with writing their question. You can always pair them up with another student if they are struggling with the writing part of it, and they can collaborate together and have one card between them. What I love about this activity and why I used it in the classroom is now I know with whatever topic we did our insight and our question about, I can read these questions that you all just left about the continuum. And if I was going to come back tomorrow, I could answer these questions and clear up any misconceptions. I also am able to see what was really resonating with you on the insights. And if it was a content piece, math, reading, whatever, are you grabbing on to the teaching point that I was looking at? So that's kind of the purpose of these, a quick assessment. Once again, the goal is for everybody to get an opportunity to share their thinking. And then one thing I forgot to mention was that in your note catcher, there's a little section where I talk about each strategy. And then there's a column that says, when and where could you give this a go? I probably planned about 3 hours of content into this, 1 hour and 15-minute presentation. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that. But if something sticks with you, like, oh, I could use this at a PD that I have coming up, or this would be a great activity for our science classroom, or an activity for math, could have them solve a problem or introduce a new strategy, and they could see what they have. So those are our 2 activities. What I'd like you to do is have the option at your table. I'm going to give you probably just about 2 minutes. I'm not going to give you too long. But I want you to think about, we're going to try to connect this to our current practice or current context. How does this continuum of student engagement align with what you currently observe, either at your site, in your schools? And we heard it already in the insights a little bit, but can you identify where you typically see most students fall within this continuum? Or if you want to be thinking a little bit more about application, how could you, if you're a leader that does professional learning, how could you embed this continuum with them? How could you think about interventions that could happen for students that might be disengaged? How could you use this continuum to support higher levels of engagement? Or is there a way that you could do some data collection around that? So a couple of different options. Again, I'm going to give you just about 2 minutes to talk. I invite you in the for our virtual participants, drop your thoughts into the chat and we will check those out. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pull you back together. I heard some great discussion. I did want to elevate a comment. I heard someone talking about that I believe this is, I kind of came in tail end, but I believe they were talking about students kind of initialing either their goal or where they thought they were on the continuum. Great activity for the kids to do. And it made me think of a point that I forgot to mention, which is this could have the potential to become like a clip up, clip down chart where the teacher is identifying where a student is. This is about the student reflecting on where they are. So as the teacher, educator, leader, you're encouraging, you're asking questions to get to where students think that they are. And if usually they're pretty accurate about where they are, they know. But if they're not, you can ask questions to engage, but it's not about teachers placing their judgment about where they are. It's more about getting the students to realize that. So I just want to make sure of that. Thank you for that great discussion. Heard lots of wonderful things. We are going to keep moving forward. And we're going to do a quick check-in. I'd like you to take a minute. On a scale of 0 to 10, how engaged are you right now? Just an opportunity for you to think about it. And what do you need to get to the next number? So if you're at a 1 because your email is blowing up as you're sitting here trying to pay attention, that's okay. What do you need to get to a 2? And the reason that I do this is because A, it gives you an opportunity to check in about where you are right now. You just had a chance to talk, so you might be a little bit more engaged than if you were listening to me chat the whole time. And then the other reason is it's not about being driving always. Like, we're humans. Our brains cannot handle being at the driving level of engagement for everything, for a myriad of reasons. And we should not expect students to be driving the entire time either. And often, and you'll hear this in the videos, if you watch the whole video, they talk a lot about just getting the kids, like if a kid is disrupting and they're throwing chairs, okay, let's just get them to avoiding. Like, let's get them to where they're not disrupting anybody else's learning, they're just avoiding their own. And then we can get them to the withdrawing. Well, they're there, they're listening, they might not be participating yet. So it's not about taking huge jumps. I don't expect everybody to be at a 10. It's how can you make those incremental things? And just another opportunity for you to check in and see where you are. All right, now we're going to talk a little bit about engagement as a partnership. And I include this in here because I don't know about you. I've been in education for a long time. And when I went to my teacher credential school, this is the message that I felt like I got. If you plan a lesson and it is an engaging lesson, your students will learn. If your students don't learn, you did not do a good enough job of engaging them, and you need to do a better job of planning activities that will engage them. That was the message, not a negative message, but that was the message that I got. The message that I got was that it was my sole responsibility to engage the students. I couldn't do it. It's their engagement. They're the ones that have to engage. I can provide as many opportunities as I want, but ultimately it has to be the students, because otherwise it turns into a battleground. I know I can feel that all of you have been in a situation where you are trying to pull a student along to get them engaged, and they are resisting and they do not want to give control over to you. And so the next couple of things we're going to talk about is this partnership, bringing students along in engagement rather than telling them what they need to do to engage. So again, Amy Berry in her book, Reimagining Engagement, talked about reimagining engagement as a partnership between students. And she gave 5 things to think about that can bring students along with you. And we're going to talk about each of these 5 things in the next 20 minutes or so. So the first one is cultivate a culture of engagement. That means that this is the part that we do have a lot of control over, right? We have to think about opportunities that invite students to seek out challenges. Can we design activities that will give them a chance to do that? We have to encourage students to set goals for themselves and provide opportunities to set goals for improvement. And if we have this culture of engagement, students will move forward as they're able to improve their engagement or move to the investing and driving levels of engagement. Now, we can do all of those things. And sometimes there are barriers to creating this culture of engagement. And some of those barriers might include, will students willingly embrace challenge? There are some students that school has been so easy for them. They have learned the compliance, the participating rule, and they have a hard time being challenged. And so even the engagement continuum is not just for students that have trouble engaging. It's for everybody because they might not embrace that challenge. Another question we have to ask ourselves when we're trying to create this culture of engagement is, do the students have the skills necessary? If you look at that engagement of continuum and you see the line on the bottom, engaging with peers, there's a lot of skills down there between like turn taking, asking and answering questions, setting goals. Do students have the skills to do that? And if we're creating this culture of engagement, we have to make sure that the students have those. We have a lot of students that have a fear of failure, especially those high achieving students that have not ever failed at something. And so this idea of getting to the driving level of engagement where they're doing things that are challenging them, some students might not be willing to put themselves out there like that because they haven't had the opportunity. And again, those students that have learned the game of school, if they have a fear of having to put in more effort, they like where they are. That's their comfort zone. When we create this culture of engagement, sometimes we're going to have to take kids out of that comfort zone. I'm going to ask you very quickly to just think about your answers to these questions. What do good learners do? Whatever the word good learner means to you. What do they do? You could also ask it, what do engaged learners do? What does it mean to be a successful learner at school? What does it mean when you make a mistake or get things wrong? How does that make you feel? What helps you learn? You answered that one. What engages you as a learner helps you learn. And what makes it hard for you to learn? You've already thought about that today as well. I'm going to tell you, when I heard this, I was a little embarrassed because it had never occurred to me to do this. But you just thought of your answers, hopefully, or at least an answer to one or two of those. I wonder what your students would say if you asked them the same question. Because maybe what I believe an engaged or good learner does is different than what my student believes an engaged or good learner does. And if we're not on the same page, we're already going to make engagement more difficult than it needs to be because we're not working towards that same goal. So I encourage you, if you work with students, if you work with adults, ask these questions. See if you're on the same page. See if what helps you learn is the same thing that helps other people learn. I will tell you, my biggest pet peeve is in a staff meeting or on a Zoom meeting when they tell you to read and they play music. Because I am not a great reader. And you put music on and I have zero idea what I'm reading. But my colleague loves music and plays it all the time when she's reading because it helps her to focus. The two of us should not be in a cubicle next to each other because we both struggle with that. And neither one of us is in the wrong. It's just what we're doing. And so if we're trying to cultivate this culture of engagement, it's important that everybody's on the same page with what that means. All right. And then The other thing I would ask you is if you're working with teacher leaders, you can ask them, what does it mean to be a successful teacher at this school? Do they have the same idea as you if you're some sort of leader at a site? Okay, I'm going to go through this one a little bit more quickly. But the second component to engagement as a partnership is the idea of designing learning experiences that optimize engagement. All right. And if you're thinking about an activity that you typically have your students do, and we know that the goal to accelerate learning is to get students into the investing and driving areas of engagement. So what we need to think about is, are we giving them opportunities to ask questions? Do we give them the opportunity to set goals? Because if in the task, we do not give them the opportunity to do that, they are not going to get into those areas. Same thing in engaging with peers. If they're not getting an opportunity to share their thinking, or if they're not getting an opportunity to collaborate towards a shared goal, that's going to make it much more difficult to get into those areas of into those levels of engagement. So as we're thinking about it, not asking teachers to design a whole new lesson, if you're engaging with this with your colleagues or teachers at your site, what's one little tweak they could make in order to do that? Maybe it's just putting in a turn and talk. Just 30 seconds of a turn and talk, share your ideas, you're building in more opportunities. And if you're an educator designing a lesson, at the end of your lesson, just browse through the continuum and say, do they have opportunities to get these? And or can I make a little tweak that will provide more opportunities to do that? All right, the third one is energizing students' inner motivational resources. And Desi and Ryan in 2000 said that there were 3 things that all humans needed in order to thrive. The first one is competence. They have to believe that they can actually attain it. If they don't believe that, they're not going to get there. And I call that the Goldilocks theory, because our job as educators is to find that just right point to challenge them, but it's not so challenging that they don't think that they can get there. And so we want that to be just right. The second is autonomy. None of us like to be told what to do. That's why we became teachers. We like to tell others what to do. But students, they feel the same way. And so any way that we can get student voice and student choice into our activities are going to energize students to want to engage more. If they get to choose between this and this, they're going to engage more. And then the last one is relatedness, meaning that the connection that kids make to staff at their school. Through Hattie's work, it has a teacher-student relationship, has an effect size of 0.62, which is great for accelerating student learning. And so if you're building those connections, students are going to rise to your expectations and want to work harder for you. We're going to dig for the fourth one. We're going to dig into autonomy just a little bit more. So the fourth component of engagement as a partnership is to support student autonomy and agency. And this can be challenging. John Marshall Reeve in 2009 did a continuum on autonomy supportive environments in the classroom versus controlling moments in the classroom. Anybody in here have a moment that they felt like, oh, I needed to be in control of the whole time and found it really difficult to give over control to students? I did too. So you'll see in your note catcher, there's some lists of different activities, virtual participants. You have yours on your digital note catcher as well. I'm just going to ask you to go through that. We just talked very briefly about autonomy. We want to have student voice. We want to engage students in feeling like they have a say in what's happening. So at your table, I'm going to invite you to just read the activities under autonomy, supportive, and controlling, and decide you're going to put an A next to it and a C not next to it. No, sorry, a C next to the activities that are more controlling. And this is on the very bottom of page 4, if you're looking for it. And you can do this as a table group or individually, whichever is feeling good to you. Virtual participants, I'm going to invite you. If you come across one that you're not sure of, feel free to drop that in the chat. Yes, it is on page 4 of your note catcher. Virtual participants, you are going to look on page 4 of your digital note catcher. Although if you've been putting notes in, it might be a little bit after that. All right, I'm going to invite you to either look at the slide or our virtual participants, you can look at the slide as well. So these were the activities that sort of fell under autonomy supportive. There were some charged words in a lot of these statements that made it probably a little bit easier to decide if it was controlling or autonomy supportive. I just want to make sure that I'm clear. It is again, not an either or. There are degrees to which each of these might be controlling or autonomy supportive. But the idea behind it is, again, if you're thinking about your students as partners, you want their voice in somewhere. And are there times when you have to be more controlling? Absolutely. There are those times, but anywhere that you can try to take a student's perspective, anytime that you can explain the value or benefit of what you're doing, anytime that you can offer choices, anytime that you can display patience is always going to be supportive to building that autonomy. And I think as a teacher, I'll speak for myself. When I was less sure either about content, behaviors, or other things, I tended to go more towards the controlling side of that continuum. And recognizing that about myself helped me to think about, okay, how can I be more autonomy supportive with that? All right, we're getting close to the end, so I'm going to keep moving us forward. The next one is to collaborate with all students to optimize engagement. I mentioned this earlier. The engagement continuum is not just for students that have trouble staying engaged. The goal is to maximize engagement for all students, not just the students that need help. And so thinking about, sometimes a misconception is that we are helping students, if we're helping them to do the activity, they're engaged, but we want them, if they can't do the activity, we often think of them as being unmotivated or unengaged. And often it might be that they don't have the skill to do the activity, not that they don't want to. And so just thinking about those things and knowing that You have to work to engage all students, again, not just the ones that need help. Okay, right on the next page of your note catcher, you have our 5 components of engagement as a partnership. How would you rank these components in the order that you feel is the most immediate to address is going to get a number 1, and the least immediate to address is going to get a number 5. Okay, so rank them in order from most immediate to address to least immediate to address. I'm just going to give you about a minute, so don't hem and haw. Virtual participants, I'm going to ask you to drop your number 1 in the chat, please. Give me, in the room, give me a thumbs up when you have all 5 ranked. All right, turn to an elbow partner and or a triad or your table. You choose. I'm going to offer choices to support your autonomy. What was your number 1 and why did you make that number 1? All right, I'm going to go ahead and pull you back together. In the chat, we had a couple of people say collaborating with all students was their number 1. We heard cultivating a culture of engagement. And designing learning. Just out of curiosity, how many people at their table had the same number 1? Raise your hand if you had the same number 1 with people at your table. Do you all work at the same site? Interesting. Okay. All right. Good to know. Good to know. All right. But I didn't see a lot of other hands. I saw a couple in the back that that had the same number 1. There's lots of different reasons why you could have a different number 1, and there's no right answer. You could feel great about one of the things you're already doing, and that might be the least important to address because you already feel great about it. Or something else might be standing out to you as an immediate need. So again, this is ranking, and ranking is great when you have when you present information to students and you want them to put them in order from the least to most important, least impactful to most impactful, because it gives the opportunity for them to think about it and justify their response. And that builds that language that we're looking for. All right. So why did we talk about an engagement? And you're, again, going to hear more about this. So I'm going to fly through some of these slides and we're not even going to talk about them because if you stay for the Ignites, you're going to hear more about this. But we know that the focus of CCLA is to focus on priority content and evidence-based strategies. We partnered with an elementary school and we wanted to get in and work on those evidence-based strategies. And we started the year at Mary Casey Black School doing some empathy interviews. And this was the data that we got. The question was, what does engagement mean to you? Or what do we mean by engagement? I don't know, and marriage were the top answers. And so we said, how can we expect students to be engaged if they don't know? We surveyed every student, and that was what happened. And so we did, again, you'll hear more about this. We did some classroom walkthroughs to see what we learned. And we took the engagement continuum and those descriptors, and you have copies of this either in the Google Drive or in your folder. And we just did tally marks. We went in at a moment in time, we saw where kids were, and this is what we noticed. Each color represents a level of engagement. This school had a lot of participating students. Great. Not a lot of disruption. So we decided to do a little bit of work with them. We did some professional learning. We talked about engagement. You'll see this is the TK class that I was talking about that has the level, the continuum there. And in January, so we did it in the fall. In January, we did it again. And this is the difference that we saw. More of the students were in that participating and driving level of engagement because we started to have common language. Every teacher had a poster of it in their classroom. They talked about it at the beginning of their activities. And we even saw a decrease in disrupting and avoiding, which was great. So we were so excited about this work. They did some self-evaluation and they placed themselves and did some writing about where they thought they were, as well as their whole group when they did a group activity. And so that was the work that we did. And again, you're going to hear a little bit more about it at the Ignite. Today, for our session, the activities that we talked about, chalkboard splash, networking session, notice and wonder, IQ cards, and ranking, were here from this book, Total Participation Techniques. I highly recommend it. It has the activities, it talks about how to do them and ways that you can have collaboration, discourse. If you need movement, they're categorized by that. It's a great tool. And that's what we use to try to engage our students. And so I just want to say thank you so much for being here today. I hope that you walked away with some new learning. And I hope that the rest of your session is great. Thank you again for joining me. Our virtual participants, thank you so much for engaging with us today. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you. And I only didn't get to like 12 or 14 slides, which is great, I think. So thank you again. Please feel free. My email is on here. Feel free to reach out to me if you have more